I'm Miles. This is a video telling you how I have survived and thrived 28 years after a heart and lung transplant. So my mum had German measles when she was pregnant, and I came out looking fine, but I had a heart attack at 11 weeks. I recovered, made it through toddlerhood. There was obviously something wrong. I was put under a heart specialist, and I grew up. I had very blue lips. I couldn't do much. I stood out from the crowd with my big blue cheeks and my inability to run around. So I just studied on academics and was able to do a bit of archery and shooting, but nothing too energetic. And apart from a few fashion faux pas, got to teenagehood. I was put on a transplant waiting list, and boom, at 15, had a heart and lung transplant in 1991. And immediately took back to life with renewed hope and optimism. And here I am today with one grown-up son, another one on the way, and a wonderful family to live with. So that's a short history. And now for my tips on how to get by for 28 years on the heart and lung transplant. So I was researching this a little bit, but mostly it was off the top of my head. Number one, always take your meds. Apparently, I was discovered not everyone takes their meds consistently. I think this is crazy, especially given that you're on a waiting list and had an expensive op and probably took someone else's place on the list to an extent. So you have the responsibility to yourself and your family and the donor's family and the people on the rest of the waiting list to take your meds every single time you're meant to. The Stanford transplant department has a good record, and that's one of the top tips they recommend as well.
The patients that survive a long time after lung transplant seem to have some similar characteristics. One of them is a strict adherence to their medical regimen and exercise regimen.
Tip 2, exercise, exercise, exercise. Your body thrives on it. I do some relatively extreme stuff, sprinting, I have played rugby, but you can do whatever you can do. You just need to light that fire in terms of getting the exercise going, and you need to keep that fire burning once you've got it going, and don't let it go out. If it does, just rekindle it as soon as possible. Number 3, believe in it. I think a belief system or religion or mantras or sort of directing your entire brain and subconscious to think that everything's going to go well for you is a good thing. So whether it's prayer or I actually use regular hypnotherapy, just getting you all to yourself, your whole being, to sort of believe everything's going to be okay and go well for you in that respect, I think is going to be a positive thing.
It didn't matter what statistics said. It mattered that we would never give up, that we're going to grow old together and go together because we do everything together.
Tip 4, regular physical therapies. I have massages, I do yoga, which is kind of like a cheap person's massage. If I don't have any money for a massage, yoga is really good for that. Spending little or as little time as possible injured or physically unwell or stressed or fatigued is important. So look after yourself. I've also had acupuncture and Chinese herbs. One time the acupuncture reduced my medical intake by 80% down to 20% of what it was. Presumably that was improving my digestion somehow. So I don't know the ins and outs of it. All I know is that for about 5 years I took 5 tacrolimus pills morning and night. I had some acupuncture and pills, and then after about 2 or 3 weeks of crazy blood tests and the hospital freaking out, I was down to taking 1 pill in the morning and 1 at night. Tip 5, eat well. And I mean nutritiously dense food, meats and greens. I've tried all sorts of diets. I've tried carnivore diets, reducitarian diets where you hardly eat any meat, and also paleo diets where you eat a lot of raw food. But generally, just eating healthy and not letting anxiety control my diet too much is now what I've stuck to. although I did fast once up to 11 days. That's just a complete water fast. And even now, I do fast a few times a year. Those are generally like 36-hour fasts. If you hear anyone discredit fasting, they haven't really looked at many studies. There's so many that show the benefits across the board, from artery rejuvenation through to general like cell apoptosis, where the unhealthy ones just pop off a bit quicker. It gives the body a chance to have a look around, not only for food sources, but for any other issues that are going wrong. So tip 6, if you can, know yourself and your medications. I've had several arguments over the years with consultants and surgeons. I've been told twice that I've done well, but it looks like it's all over, and I have a terminal problem. That's the opposite of a placebo effect, by the way. I think you all know what the placebo is. It's called the nocebo effect. I'm not making this up, it's well documented. Those consultants who said my days were numbered were looking at charts and I guess extrapolating from previous experiences, but they weren't considering me. They weren't being malicious, but just be careful, because you might hear careless negative thoughts and opinions from professionals sometimes. I've had, for example, one consultant come in and really get me down, and I felt terrible, only for a nurse to come in and say, well, you're still blowing 5 litres of air, can't all be, doom and gloom, and sort of perked me back up. So stick to the aforementioned positive thoughts and belief systems I mentioned in tip 3. I've kept well, so I don't have to go on many meds. I've generally said no to some suggestions, and I don't need it until the consultant has pleaded with me and shown me some evidence, or until I've come back asking for it. So I did ask for blood pressure meds eventually. I went on after about 10 years into the operation, post-operation. I've had remarkably few medications for the majority of my post-operative life, just the usual core anti-rejection ones and antibiotics. Although the amount of meds I'm on now is creeping up. I've got ones for gout, allopurinol, blood pressure, Rampril, and I'm probably soon going to go on statins for atherosclerosis, although I'm still literally these last few months tying up whether to try something else out and maybe another long fast or some other ways to attack the cholesterol levels. So yeah, it's not a done deal on any of those things with me, and I like to talk it through and think about it. And I guess there's that analogy of that stubborn old person who lives for ages and ages and ages, almost through the fact that they're stubborn. Maybe there's a little bit of that in my tip 6. Tip 7, bouncebackability. Lovely made up word, but I've had 3 major turns for the worst. They're looking pretty grim. Once at 21, I was losing a lot of lung capacity. Once 5 years ago, I caught a really strong fungal infection that kills 1 in 3 people, even with treatment apparently. And then one this year when my heart started beating fast, 240 beats per minute in the atriums and 130 beats per minute in the ventricles. Not good news. Pretty dark days in each of those events. Had a tough time. It certainly wasn't a given that I would be bouncing back, but I always did, and I would always stick to my principles or almost these tips, and I would probably sort of exercise a little bit earlier than I was told to, and
we just live every day, and then something happens again, and it's cancer, it's surgery, it's chemo, and then he comes out of it again.
So that video is from Steve Rasmussen, who's the only other heart and lung transplant person I found who's survived longer than me. So I think his words and his wife's words are worth noting as well. But yeah, each and every time I've concentrated, I've just ate really well. I focused myself on being positive and thinking that things are going to turn out well. And I've exercised and done all those other tips, and sure enough, each and every of those pretty bad times, I've come back fine within a few months and surprised myself, and I've certainly surprised several consultants over the years. So consultants and doctors, they generally do know best. And don't take any of my advice for certain medical opinion, but these are just tips that I've personally used, and it could just be blind luck that I'm here 28 years after the op. Nothing to do with any of these tips. It's not how kind of science works, I know for sure, but I kind of believe in them myself, and I just thought I'd mention them in case anyone else finds them useful. So if you're considering a transplant, good luck to you. If you're on the waiting list or you've just had one, again, good luck. And if you do have any questions, just leave a comment or feel free to message me. Cheers, bye.